Hello YouTube, this is Capandball here, your favorite gun channel in beautiful bright English language. And for today I have a beautiful topic for you. We are going to check the external ballistics and the terminal ballistics of the 4520 cartridge with a full charge of black powder. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you will enjoy it. Come with me. But before we jump into the water, let me thank you for your support. Your donation through Patreon is a vital element for keeping the quality of the channel high. I can offer you exclusive content, early access and other benefits. Please visit patreon.com/capandball. Thank you very much again. The science of ballistics is divided into three major fields. The first one is internal ballistics. This is dealing with what happens in the bore while the bullet is passing through it. The second one is external ballistics, which describes what happens to the bullet during its flight. And the third one is terminal ballistics. It tells us what happens when the bullet is impacting its target. This has a very specific, little, but a very interesting part, which is called the wound ballistics, which tells us what happens to the living tissue when the bullet hits it. If you are looking for well-researched scientific information about this topic, I suggest you to read solely scientific papers from notable scientific journals. That's the basics. It is much better to learn the truth from people who actually treat gunshot wounds than from people who just make YouTube videos about it, like Capandball. But actually there's a YouTube channel that I suggest you to visit. This is run by Mr. Alexander Jason. He was a forensic scientist. He worked together with Dr. Martin Fackler at the ballistics laboratory of the United States Army. And together they published quite a few scientific papers about gunshot wounds. So what they tell is not bullshit. This is actually the truth. So I really suggest you to visit this YouTube channel. This is called A_J. You can find a link in the description area of my video. Dr. Fackler and Mr. Jason are actually the founding fathers of the Wound Ballistics Association for further study of this topic. They have a video that is actually focusing on wound ballistics. I shared the link to this video also in the comment section, which is very interesting. It's a 1 hour 20-minute video, but I really suggest you to watch it fully because it makes you clearly understand what is really happening when a bullet is striking the body. Before we continue, I would like to express my thanks to Mr. Jason for helping me to create this content for you. So, Alex, thank you very much again. Let's talk about what happens when the bullet is hitting the body. Well, the bullet damage is caused by the bullet rupturing the tissue as it is cutting through the body, cutting through the tissue. Which means it is creating the entrance wound, it is creating the central cavity, and is creating the exit wound, if it exits the body, of course. This is what we call the permanent cavity. A gunshot wound is not always lethal. Its severity is dependent on many factors like the mass, the shape, the speed of the bullet, the placement of the shot. It is dependent on which part of the body is hit. It will only be quickly lethal if it hits vital organs like the brain, like the spines, like the heart. Shot placement, therefore, is a key element of a fast kill. But it's also important to understand what kind of tissue the bullet will hit. The denser the tissue is, the larger the deformation of the bullet will be. And the larger the bullet is, the more veins it will cut, the more damage it will do to the tissue. Therefore, it will be much more effective. But if the frontal area of the bullet is increasing by the expansion, it will also slow down much quicker in the tissue, so it will penetrate less deeper. The length and the diameter of the wound channel is critical, because you must have enough penetration to reach the vital organs. That's very important. Second, the wider this track is, the more blood vessels you can cut, and the more damage you will do to the tissue. I could actually stop now, but if you ever read an article about wound ballistics, or you saw any of my videos describing the effect of historical arms bullet fired into gelatin blocks, you will immediately ask, but what about the cavitation? And what about the shockwave? We do talk a lot about cavitation, energy transfer, ballooning, but in fact, the damage actually is mainly done by the bullet passing through the tissue. The cavitation looks perfect on high-speed camera, but actually it has a little to do with actually killing the game, because the game will still die because the bullet is passing through vital organs. But don't get me wrong, the cavitation or the temporary cavity can cause damage to the surrounding tissue. But this effect is much inferior compared to the central wound that is cut by the bullet. Because most of our body parts are flexible, strongly flexible. The cavitation effect of the bullet is much stronger in organs that are filled with liquid than in the organs that are filled with air, like the lungs. Because Liquids are not compressible, while air can be compressed in an extensive measure. Now, this is why the Second World War soldiers said it is much better to go into an engagement with an empty stomach than with a full one. And there are organs like the liver, which are non-elastic. They are much more sensitive to the stretching effect. Actually, there's a third effect that is often mentioned in articles about wound ballistics, which is the sonic pressure wave created by the tip of the bullet. Well, ladies and gentlemen, actually this effect does not do any damage to the tissue. If you don't believe me, then please visit the links that I shared in the comment section, follow Mr. Feckler and Mr. Jason, and learn the truth from them. The permanent cavity is depending on the shape, the weight, and the stability of the bullet in the wound, while the temporary cavity is depending on the velocity of the bullet. The more velocity it has, the larger this cavitation will be. But this does not necessarily mean that a low velocity bullet that has no any cavitation will not kill as fast as a high-speed bullet that has a huge cavitation. It is a good question which effect is more important in wound ballistics. Well, the most recent researchers agree that the first effect, the bullet cutting through the tissue and rupturing the blood vessels, the tissue, that's much more important than the secondary effects. We hear a lot about kinetic energy. We read a lot about its transfer to the tissue. And in many cases, the effectiveness of the cartridge is described by the muzzle energy. For example, in the Hungarian hunting laws, you have to reach a certain level of muzzle energy to hunt big game. For example, for roe deer, you need 1,000 joules. For red deer, you need 2,500 joules. But this is not enough, because energy is not killing by itself. A good shot placement, a shot reaching the vital organs, now that is killing the game. So what is exactly what we wish for when we are talking about an ethical kill? First, we would like to cause as little suffering as possible and have as fast kill as possible, an instantaneous kill. That's the goal. To keep the game at the exact spot where it was shot. And this is reached by a good shot placement. When the game is hit, it will often not feel the pain. This is the same situation what happens to soldiers. If you read memories about Second World War, First World War, the Vietnamese War, you will read that the wounded soldier actually does not feel the pain for many, many minutes. Now, this is a natural response of the body, to keep the body working, to be able to flee, to be able to fight back, whatever the situation is. So our goal is to cut as many blood vessels as possible to reach a vital organ, so the blood pressure will drop very fast and the game will fall unconscious before even he feels the pain. So the key for an ethical kill is finding the right bullet for the job. For smaller game, you have to find a bullet that is expanding faster. A bullet that is larger, or it is expanding large when it is impacting the body, is causing a larger wound in the tissue, which we'll call a faster death. In the case of larger body game, the vital organs are hidden well inside the body, which means that your bullet will have to penetrate deeper to reach these vital organs. This means that if you are using a fast expanding bullet, you will not be able to reach the vital organs. This is not good. You need deeper penetration in this case. There can of course be other side effects of your shot. For example, if you hit a bone, it will be crushed, and the little particles will become secondary missiles, causing extensive damage to the tissue. And you may ask now, why the hell we need velocity at all? Well, we need velocity, of course. We have two main reasons for this. The first one is to have a flat trajectory. The second one is to have enough impact velocity so your bullet can expand when it hits the body. So now we know the basics of terminal ballistics, but terminal ballistics is the last step. The first step is internal ballistics, but I'm not going to measure the gas pressure curve in my bore because I'm not going to drill holes on it to put the sensors inside. But we're going to talk about the external ballistics, so what is happening to the bullet when it is during its flight. And for this purpose, I did not pull back the horses, meaning that 120 grains of 1.5 Swiss powder and the 540 grain paper patch bullet. This is the same bullet that I have been using in the previous tests. This is not the most accurate load for this cartridge, but the most powerful one. So I'm going to test the round with this full charge. We have two excellent tools for this project. The first one is a ballistics radar. It's a Doppler radar that will track the bullet during its flight. So I will be able to measure its speed not just at the muzzle, but also at various distances, up to 30 meters. But actually this lab radar, this device, is following the bullet for up to 120-130 meters. The next implement I have is a ballistic software. It's an excellent ballistic tool that is actually used by the CIP proof houses as well. At least it is used in the Hungarian CIP proof house for sure. It is a software called Quick Target, which gives you an excellent view, overall view about the ballistics performance of your cartridge. This excellent software offers us a possibility to make a simulation of the complete curved trajectory of this bullet up until the very end. But to do this, first we have to determine the ballistic coefficient of the bullet. This is done by using the ballistic radar, measuring the velocity at two different distances, and using these velocities we are able to calculate it using a formula or using simply the built-in application of this beautiful software. Now, this ballistic coefficient is a unique number. It's a modifier that is existing in nearly all the ballistics formulas that is describing the shape of the bullet, or it is based on the shape of the bullet and is describing the effect of the resistance of the air on the bullet. And the muzzle velocity is 438 meters per secondum, and it slows down to 428 at 30 meters. Now this gives us a good option to calculate its BC. The 438 meters per secondum, or the 1437 feet per secondum, is relatively a high number. It is a high velocity if I'm using an alloyed bullet, basically made from lead. If you go above this number, then probably your bullet will just jump the rifling and lose accuracy, and also it will let the bore. So technically this is very close to the very end of the velocities that you can make with a lead alloy bullet. And still it is only half of the velocity that a modern hunting round has. Using this software, we determined that the ballistic coefficient of this bullet is 0.570. This is what we are going to use for the simulation. Let's check the trajectory of the 4520 first. The high velocity is needed for a flat trajectory. And this is quite important in the case of the buffalo rifles, because the buffalo rifles were not equipped with long-range leather sights, but usually they were equipped with normal iron sights. The American bison is big, and so is the vital area of its body. The vital area of a capital bull can be as high as a meter. This is what we will use as a critical area to hit, 50 centimeters below and above the line of sight. As I mentioned in the previous part, usually the buffalo hunts were conducted between 300, 200 to 400 yards of distance. And actually this is the distance that we have to check whether the bullet is capable of completely staying in this 50 centimeter plus 50 centimeter minus zone for a vital shot. This is a simulation with a rifle 0 to 300 meters or 330 yards. And the result is not bad. The bullet rises only a little higher than 50 centimeters above the line of sight, while it drops under minus 50 at around 350 meters. In theory, this means that wherever a bull is standing within this distance, the bullet path stays in the vital zone using the same sight settings. Of course, this was not the case because they had that leather sight that could be set to approximate distances, but still this shows that actually this was considered a very flat trajectory in the 19th century. Let's check now how much punch it delivered in various distances. So we set a simulation to up to 2 kilometers, 2000 meters distance. And ladies and gentlemen, well, this is not the fastest thing on earth, but it still delivers a lot of punch. A lot of punch. So this stuff is a freight train. It starts with a muzzle energy of 3,350 joules, which is 2,470 foot-pound. And at 400 meters, it still keeps 2/3 of its kinetic energy. Even at 2,000 meters or 2,200 yards, it has 750 joules of energy. That is around 550 foot-pounds of kinetic energy, which is very, very good. Very good. And I'm pretty sure that you are all interested in how the trajectory looks like when you're shooting the rifle, or zero the rifle to 1,000 yards. That's a very common target shooting distance for long-range shooters. Well, it's not a flat trajectory in modern sense, so which means that you will have the bullet flying at 500 or 600 yards, that's the top of the curve, at 12 meters above the line of sight, but compared to a 4570 cartridge, which will deliver, let's say, 20% or 30% worse data, it is still a flat trajectory. It was considered a flat trajectory, but it is still, I say, 12 meters above the line of sight. It is also very interesting to see what was the total distance this bullet can travel. Well, if it is shot in an ideal angle of 38.3 degrees, it will travel to 2600 meters. And it will impact in an angle of around 60 degrees. And at this distance it will not just fall on your head, because it will still have some horizontal movement. The kinetic energy of this bullet at 2600 yards, or meters, sorry, it will be still 400 joules or 295 foot-pounds of energy, which means that this bullet, actually, with a good shot placement, with an accurate shot, it can still kill you. It will still kill a big game also. So never underestimate an obsolete rifle with an obsolete cartridge. Let's see now how this performance transforms into killing power. Or helping this project is a Clearview ballistic gelatin block, which is made from 10% ballistic gelatin. It's a synthetic material, so not organic gelatin, and it is manufactured according to the FBI standards. The other tool I have is my mobile phone that can record 980 frames per second. This is not the fastest thing. It is much better to use, let's say, at least 10,000 frames per second, but I don't have a fast camera on hand. But this will also show us the difference between a modern round and also between this obsolete cartridge. So again, 120 grains of black powder and a 540 grain paper patch bullet. Well, at this recording speed we don't see too many things, but let's check the ballasting gelatin first. Probably it tells us something about the performance of the bullet. There is very little energy transfer. I can only see some energy transfer on the second half of the gelatin block, and just by seeing from the outside, of course, we did not slow it down yet, but we will, and we will examine what is happening here. I really have to say that it has a very good penetration. This is a hard bullet. It is made of 1-20 thin lead alloy, which is hard alloy. It must have a beautiful penetration, so this bullet can be perfect for hunting big game like the buffalo, but not an ideal choice for normal big game like red deer here in Hungary, or roe deer or wild boar. It will puncture a hole. It will go through at least 5 red deer, but no energy transfer. Even if the impact velocity was much above the sound barrier, we can suppose that the bullet was not expanding fast. The permanent cavity is a thin hole, and the increasing damage in the second half of the gelatin is proving that probably it started to expand later, at around 25-30 cm deep in the block. The entrance wound is a little hole, while double size is the exit wound. It is telling, but let's slow down this movie to see exactly what is happening when it is hitting the ballistic gelatin block. The extreme slow motion recording shows a really moderate cavitation that increases in the second half of the block. The bullet penetrated deep and the expansion was slow. Okay, so now we know what the 4520 does at a 30-meter impact, but let's compare it to a modern round. I have this round, it's a Cellier Bello 8x57 JRS. This is for my beautiful single-shot hunting rifle. This is a Czech cartridge. It is the SPCE version, which means that it has a cutting edge here, but it's technically a normal soft point bullet. Let's see its performance in the same ballistic gelatin at the same distance. The difference is clear. A much stronger cavitation is visible, while the block absorbed much more of the kinetic energy of the bullet. Now, to have a better view, let's compare the two side by side. And the question is, which one would you choose for a Bison? The 4520 or the 8x57 soft point? To make the right choice, we have to slow this down even further. And that's the point. The 8x57 expands violently without penetrating deep into the block, while the 4520 retains its shape and expands much later, giving the possibility to penetrate deeper to reach vital organs. This obsolete round has less than half the impact velocity of a modern cartridge. Still, it will be more lethal to the Bison. If we had another gelatin block behind the one that we're actually shooting with both cartridges, I'm 100% sure that we should have seen a much better penetration increase of the 4520 than in the case of the 8x57 cartridge. And this is why it is much more capable of hunting bison than this modern cartridge. Because the buffalo's body is wide. If you want to reach the organs, then you need a very deep penetration. You have thick layers of skin, bone and flesh before you can reach those vital organs. So which means that if your bullet expands too fast, it will not be able to reach them. This is why we need a hardened bullet with a very good penetration. There are no exact statistics how many shots were necessary for killing a bison, but the primary sources that we have, they all agree that 2, 3, 4 shots were necessary for killing one single bison. So let's finish this story with a saying that I learned from an Austrian friend of mine. He's a muzzleloading hunter, but in the meantime, he's one of the high-ranking managers of a top European firearms making company. And when we were talking about terminal ballistics, he said, Balázs, look, there's an old German saying, if you shoot a hole on the heart, it will die. And probably that's the simplest understanding of terminal ballistics and wound ballistics.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. You've been watching the Capandball YouTube channel. If you wish to support us, you can do it through Patreon. I will be very grateful for that. You can receive exclusive content and also other benefits. Please check it. Patreon.com/capandball. So ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay cool and keep your powder dry.